Hello YouTube, this is Hunter Surge. So as of the time that this is going up, it will be the 14th of November. Exactly a week from today, the Buddyfight collab set will be releasing in English. And as a former Buddyfight content creator, I feel it is my responsibility to cover these decks. So what we're going to be doing is over the course of this next week, as we approach the release of Buddyfight, we're going to be breaking down each of these 6 decks that are available in the Buddyfight collab, talking about any strength it has for the main format, as well as its position within the Buddyfight only format that is going to be played in um, in the day twos for several of the BCS events this season, including Vancouver, which I will be going to. So, as you might expect, we've got to start with the main character. We've got to start with Gao Mikado. So let us get into it. Alright, so let's talk Gao. What does Mr. Gao do? So let's start with this big old grade 3. Gao has a unique mechanic that is replicating the link attack mechanic of Buddyfight. So when Gao attacks, he gets to rest any of your other rear guards, and for that battle, it gets the power of the unit that was rested. They become link attack stat and they add up their power. Only during that battle, so like when that rear guard, if that rear guard attacks, it won't have the link attack power then. But let's Gao to get pretty big. And at the end of the battle that this unit attacked, counterblast 1, choose one of your rear guards in the link attack state and stand it. And if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, choose one of your rear guards with drum in its card name and stand it. And then it has a named ability. Each of the Buddyfight grade 3 Vanguards has one of these, which is themed after one of the spells from Buddyfight. My Buddy, act once per turn, use Soul Blast 1, you search your deck or drop for one specifically named Drum Bunker Dragon. This isn't grab any Drum Bunker Dragon, this is specifically you grab this grade 2 Drum Bunker Dragon, which effectively lets you get any Drum Bunker Dragon, but you call it to rear, and the cost of that unit's original act abilities is reduced by 1 gauge. And if you search your deck, you shuffle your deck. I will get out ahead of it right now. There are no rear guards in this deck that restand themselves. So, as a result, Gao is a 3-attack deck on Ride Up going first, and is a 4-attack deck after that. There is one way to theoretically help with that. Good old Gargantua Punisher. It is an impact order that it cannot be played normally, and you cannot use its ability if you have and you can use its effect if you did not resolve another impact order. So you can only use it once per turn, once per game, and only one impact order per game. Then from your hand at the end of your turn, if your opponent's damage zone has 4 or more cards and you Persona Road this turn, you counterblast 1, ditch this card, and pay 4 gauge and declare final phase. You choose one of your Vanguards, you stand it, and it attacks your opponent's Vanguard. So this is an extra Vanguard attack, which is pretty sick. It gets you another 2 drive checks. However, Gao does not actually utilize this extra attack super well, because all of Gao's Vanguard effects, his link attack effect, as well as his restand, it's all once per turn. So there's no way for him to double dip on that stuff. He won't have the kind of power he would have on his original Vanguard swing. There just isn't that much value you can gain out of the Gargantua Punisher restand. And the Gargantua Punisher restand is expensive. It's Counterblast 1, pay 4 gauge, and your opponent has to be a 4 more, and you have to have Persona Road this turn. It's just not super great in the context of Gao. Now, one of the Buddyfight decks that has access to Gargantua Punisher, that we'll be talking about in a later video, does actually make pretty good use of Gargantua Punisher. Kyoya Gain uses Gargantua Punisher pretty well because it is a Dragon attribute card that has multiple opportunities to look for off the top 5, so it can run just 1 or 2 and find it pretty reliably. But that is not the case for Gao. If you're running in Gao, you need to be running like 3 or 4 to guarantee you see it by the end of your turn 4. Then you just discard or gauge the extras. And like this isn't fighting enough value that feels super worthwhile. Now Gao does have some other things going for him in his defensive pressure that helps him make up a bit for the fact that that he only has 4 attacks. So let's talk about those. First, we have the item Sunfist Sunshine Impact. So items are armed just like Bafsarga arms. In the case of Gao's, his grade 1 will immediately allow you to equip Sunfist Sunshine Impact from your deck or drop the moment you ride into grade 1. It has an alternative mode where it can look top 7 for an Armor Dragon or an item card, but generally you'll be using it to immediately equip Sunfist Sunshine Impact. And what it does is it will give your Vanguard plus 5,000 as soon as it's equipped. So like if you're going second, your Vanguard is going to be able to swing for 13, then 15 on the next turn, which is pretty nice. And then once you're on grade 3, all of your front row drums will get an additional power plus 5,000, which is pretty nice. This is one of the only pieces of power gain that works in the early game in the entire nation. So it is quite notable. And then its second effect is when your Vanguard attacks a grade 3 or greater unit, and if you're link attacking with your buddy monster, you can discard a Sunfist Sunshine Impact from hand. And then until end of turn, your Vanguard's power becomes infinity and it gets critical +1. So this is going to like immediately demand that your opponent give you a PG, which is very, very powerful. It's very powerful to just be able to go, okay, you have to PG this. You don't have a choice in the matter. You have to PG this. Like, you have to PG this. It's the only way. Otherwise, you're just taking a 2 crit to your dome. And it's just like the ultimate PG check, which is super, super nice. And then, yeah, that's super nice pressure. Other piece of pressure we have in this deck is Crimson Battler Drum is a really nice crit gainer. You pay 1 gauge and put the top card of your deck or a card from drop into its Buddy Soul. And when it attacks or becomes link attack state and you have a grade 3 or greater Gao Vanguard, it gets critical +1 until end of turn. So this will typically be your target for Gao's restand. You'll swing with Crimson Battler first. It'll immediately get a crit, so it's immediately applying crit pressure. And it's like on Persona, right? It's going to be like minimum 25, which is very nice. Usually 30. And then Gao will swing and restand it, and then it'll swing in with the plus crit again, which is super nice stuff. And then our last big piece of offensive pressure is the card I have chosen for the buddy in this build. Now, to be honest, there's a lot of different cards that you could use as the buddy. However, Sunfist Sunshine Impact has a requirement of link attacking with your buddy monster. And this is a card that you're always going to want to be link attacking with the moment your opponent's on grade 3, and Sunfist Sunshine Impact isn't online until your opponent's on grade 3. So this lines up pretty well. This is a card that isn't really useful at all to you in the early game. So just storing it in the buddy zone where you can call it out at any time is quite nice. It works out pretty well for what we want to be doing here. Eliminates dead draws from our deck, and we always have access to it when it's time to go into it. So it gets power plus 10k, just continuous, if your opponent's on grade 3 or greater, which is great for Gao's link attack, because that means minimum, because of Sunfist Sunshine Impact, that's going to be giving it plus 5,000. This has its own plus 10,000. This is going to be 28 minimum, allowing Gao to always swing for, this is 26, 46 minimum, which is very large, very big number, before even accounting for the infinity power and plus crit of Sunshine Impact. That applies a lot of pressure immediately. And then when it becomes in link attack state, if your damage zone has 4 or more cards, or your Persona road this turn, it gets auto once per turn. When it attacks until end of battle, your opponent cannot activate their auto abilities, and then you can counterblast 1 to give it the ability to perform drive checks, and it loses 1 drive. So you'll be getting a 3rd drive check in this deck, as well as a rear guard, a very large rear guard swing that doesn't let your opponent perfect guard. That has a drive check on it. And doesn't let them use other protective autos as well, which is pretty nice. It's the auto denial isn't going to do a whole lot within the context of the Buddyfight tournaments, but that's still it's mainly going to turn off PGs, but that's still pretty nice. And it gives you a 3rd drive check, and like these 3 cards together give you a solid amount of offensive pressure. The other thing the deck has going for it is that the drum engine that is intended for the Gao deck is actually used quite a lot in the Tsuku and Kyoya decks, because it's just so powerful. It's just really, really good. So the basics of it is that Blue Sky Knights is just a pretty solid early game card. You pay 1 gauge for it, it gets a soul. And if your Vanguard isn't the grade 3 Gao, you pay Counterblast 1 to draw a card. Otherwise, it's free if you have the grade 3 Gao. And then on attack, and when it attacks into a grade 3 or greater unit, you get to Soul Charge 1 or Gauge 1 from the top of your deck. This is not optional, unfortunately, so you have to lose a card from the top of your deck. But those resources are used well enough in this deck. Then we have Drum Bunker himself, which is pay a gauge and put the top card of your deck into its Buddy Soul. It cannot take from Drop Zone, unfortunately, which is not the greatest, but I understand why they did it. And it has the act ability to pay a gauge and search your deck or drop for any drum with a different card name from this card, and call it on top of it without paying its call cost. And then if your opponent is on grade 3 or greater, any drum that has this in its Buddy Soul gets an additional power plus 5,000 and shield plus 5,000, which is good for their numbers. But most importantly, it means that any of these early game drums, you have as many additional copies of it as you have drums in your deck, which is super, super nice. And then the other one that's really good in the early game is Thunder Knight's Drum Bunker Dragon, who has the same cost as Blue Sky Knights. It's a once per turn when attacking a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, or when it becomes Link attack state to get power plus 5,000. But that's not the part we care about. When it's moved to Guardian Circle from Rear Guard Circle, so when it intercepts, it gets shield plus 5,000, and then gets an additional shield plus 5,000 for each card in its Buddy Soul. So by default, this will be a 15k shield, which is good, pretty damn good on its own. And then if, like, let's say it's at a later stage in the game and your opponent's on grade 3, and you win into this via original drum, then it's going to have 2 soul as well as the original drum in its soul, which will put it up to that puts it up to 25k shield. And we can get its Buddy Soul even higher, because one of the key pieces of this little drum engine is Drum Bunker Dragon SD, who, if it's in your drop, and you have a rear guard with drum as different card name that's placed, you can Soul Blast 1 and either shove this into its soul or call it into rear with in the same column as that placed unit. Typically speaking, you're going to use this to get an easy rear onto the field, so that you can very easily, for very low commitment, get like a 3 rear board with 1 boosted. But you can also use this to put another card in Thunder Knight's Drum's soul and give it even more shield. Very valuable defensive card. Very, very good. Very, very nice to have. You see this blast in Jack lists quite a bit. This entire drum engine, it's pretty strong in Kyoya. Very good stuff. Very good stuff. There isn't really much else to say on that, other than the fact that the typical weakness of a big interceptor like this is that it's vulnerable to removal. But because of Soul Guard, because they can just ditch one of their soul every time your opponent tries to get rid of it, it's very resilient to that, and your opponent is very discouraged from trying to go that route, because all their retire effect is going to accomplish is take away 5k of its shield, and it's still going to keep the rest, and it's still going to be really, really solid. Another really good card that Gao has access to is Draco Wisdom Knowledge of the Fifth Omni. It can be played, it's an order that can be played from drop and can be activated if you either have a Gao Vanguard or a Rearguard with Fifth Omni as the name, and you just bind it, you gauge one from the top of your deck, and you draw a card. Super nice. Particularly in the context of Buddyfight. Can I actually pull up the gauge zone here? Gauge zone. No, it doesn't let me pull up the card. But basically, each turn you are allowed to put a card from your hand into your gauge resource and draw a card. So in what this results in for Buddyfight decks is you actually want a lot of good discard fodders. Like you want like somewhere in the range of 7 to 10 good discard fodders in a Buddyfight deck, because you're going to have to discard to ride up through your ride deck, but you're also effectively discarding for the gauge. And you do want to build up that gauge well enough so you have enough resources. Now, of course, a skill with the Buddyfight decks is recognizing when you no longer need to be gauging up. But it's still very, very good in Buddyfight decks to have a lot of discard fodder, and Gao has a ton built in. Drum Bunker SD and Draco Wisdom are super good discard fodder cards. And then we get like generic stuff like Fire Regalis that we can run as well. If we're flooding on them, the Sunfists are pretty good discard fodder as well. You won't get anything out of it, but they're decent discard fodder because of Original Drum's ability to get them out of drop. A lot of the drum forms can be pretty freely discarded too. So it's pretty easy to have like pretty comfortable discards in this deck, which is very, very nice to have. Something you really, really want to be seeing with any Buddyfight deck. And what else is there to cover here? I think we mostly covered I think we have covered all of it. For the 1,000 Rapiers, so like there's an unfortunate issue with the grade 1s is that they only really gave the deck one good grade 1 that it has access to, which is Drum Bunker Dragon, which is very, very good. This SDD form is very, very strong. But we don't really have any others. You kind of want a few more grade 1s to fill slots. So I have 1,000 Rapier in here. On attack, it can Counterblast 1 to get Crit +1, which is some pretty nice offensive pressure in the early game. But that's about it. You could take this out for other stuff. Like you could put in Gargantua Punishers if you want to. Another solid card you can run is Dragobond, which is just a blitz that's 20k shield. Very nice. You can run more of the drums, particularly like the early game ones, like Thunder Knight's drum, and Blue Sky Knight's drum. Oh, and Fifth Omni Drum. I didn't touch on Fifth Omni Drum. So Fifth Omni Drum is not that fantastic in this deck's context. So on attack, when it attacks into a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, you can pay gauge, retire one of your opponent's front row rear guards, and it gets power plus 10k. Then in the front row rear, when your damage check reveals a card, if you have a grade 3 or greater Gao Vanguard, and you don't have another Fifth Omni Drum, your opponent has to discard a card. This isn't too bad. But unfortunately, our offensive pressure is typically going to be occupied with other things. This not being live until your opponent's on grade 3 is rather unfortunate, because then it directly conflicts with Drum the Future, and Drum the Future is just way, way better offensively. If you're going second, this is pretty solid to go into, since this will immediately have the power, and this won't be able to have its additional effect at that stage unless you've already went to 4 damage. There's also a pretty strong argument for buddying Fifth Omni Drum instead for that scenario, but like it's weird because you really do need to link attack with this. And you want to keep that line available to you with the Sunfist. You want to keep that crit pressure line available to you. So like I'm not a huge fan of that, but this is a decent contender for Buddy, as is Crimson Valor, to be honest. The main scenario where this card ends up being useful is if your opponent has a front row rear guard that you really want to clear. This will mainly come up in the main format. because most of the attackers in actual buddy fight format have Soul Guard or some other form of protection, so it's not going to be that useful. The other scenario is if you're on if you're late enough in the game where the crit gain of Crimson Valor no longer matters because your opponent's starting the battle phase at like 4 more, like, no, they're starting it at 5 because like if you're always going to swing with the rear that isn't Drum the Future first. So if your opponent's at 4 more, you still want it to be Crimson Valor to force them to guard it. If your opponent's at 4, you still want to force them to guard it with Crimson Valor. But if your opponent's already at 5, then 5th Omni Drum becomes quite valuable because it's getting an additional plus 10k power that Crimson Valor isn't, and it's just making your numbers way, way better. Like, that Persona My Turn with 5th Omni Drum is, it goes like 48, 48, Gao swings for like 60 plus, then the Drum the Future will swing for 38 solo, 46 if it has a boost, and then the 5th Omni Drum will swing again for like, yeah, 40, 48, like 40, 48, depending on if you boosted the first time or not. So very, very solid numbers, very good numbers for be closing things out with. The last thing I want to note is like how this deck places within the formats it's available in. So in the main format, I really can't really recommend playing. Oh, before we get into that, I forgot about the triggers. As far as what I've gone with here for the over trigger, because we are already getting like we already have really, really good crit pressure, and I don't think Red OT is. I'm not a super big fan of Red OT here. The big reason I want Blue OT here is because Drum the Future has this anti-PG effect. So like you could, and this effect is once per turn, so you can't double dip on it with Red OT. Blue OT, however, instead lets you go, okay, 100 million and plus crit to Drum the Future, and it's now going to swing in and you can't perfect guard it. And it's like, well, now your opponent just has to take 2 damage, and they're cooked. This is another reason why you kind of want this as your buddy, by the way, because as far as we're aware, we're not allowed to use the Nationless OTs or Fire Regalises, or Sanctitude for that matter, in the Buddyfight only tournament. So we have to use the over trigger. Where is it? Where is this card? Over. No, it's in Nationless, right? Yeah, here it is. We have to use the future card Buddyfight over trigger, as far as we're aware. And what this does is you take a normal order from your draw, put into your hand, you give your Vanguard crit +1, and then you give one of your buddy monsters crit +1. So this allows you to do the exact same line with Drum the Future, where you, again, make 100 million 2 crit attack that your opponent just can't PG. They just aren't allowed to. So that is pretty solid. That's pretty nice. Yeah, but they can't sank it. But sank isn't going to be relevant in this format. That is like a bit weaker overall in Buddyfight specific format because we have the Order Sentinels that aren't really affected by Drum the Future, which is again another part of why that auto denial effect just doesn't really matter that much in the Buddyfight only format. But yeah, that's why the over trigger. Okay, so for our other triggers, let us get over to Buddyfight so we can talk about a couple of the other options. So we have Trigger Energy as one of our crits. This can give power plus 3k to one of our armor dragons. If we haven't used an order that turn, this can actually make a significant difference on stages. Like give it to any of the grade 2 drums if they don't have a boost, and that'll put them up an extra stage. You can also give it to Drum Bunker SD or Drum the Future Drum Bunker SD with that is behind Drum the Future or Drum the Future itself, and push them to an extra stage as well. And Gao will be able to dip in on that power as well, and I believe that also gets him up another stage. Though I think it's like 1k short of getting him up another stage. No, that's enough for another stage. That's enough for another stage, yeah. So you can double dip on it that way. It's nothing fantastic, but like it can be helpful in a pinch. Our other crit is the generic Ultimate Buddy. You can shove it into Soul to give something Soul Guard. This is something we'll very rarely be using, but we can maybe sometimes shove it in Drum the Future so that we don't have to recall it the next turn. The other option in Dragon World is Dragon Trust, which is just a worse version of this card. You pay 1 gauge to put into the Buddy Soul of a Greater or Less Rearguard. Doesn't give it Soul Guard, doesn't have the option that we have with Drum the Future with Ultimate Buddy, so not super worth using. Then we're using 3 20k fronts. We don't super need the Soul, so we don't need to worry about the Soul front, which, yeah, we have access to the Soul front. We have Blue Sky Knights Drum to refill up our Soul, and if we're rewriting every turn, we'll have the Soul we need to continually call back original Drum with my buddy. So don't really have to worry about that side of things. And then we have the Dragon World front. Dragon Barrier just puts itself into gauge face down. We're not that down bad on gauge, so we don't need that card either. And then we have the heal trigger. One last thing to talk about. Grimoire. Grimoire sucks. Grimoire sucks. I shouldn't need to tell you. Grimoire sucks. Really, really bad card. Really, like, it's a draw trigger already. 5k shield is really, really awful. But this effect is terrible. You would never even consider using it. For our heals, we of course have the Green Dragon Shield. It's our only option here. But like also in late game scenarios, if you live past your turn 4 push, you can find yourself in a scenario where you do need a bit more Carabass available to you. And Green Dragon Shield can give that to you. As can Blue Dragon Shield. I should go without saying, we want to, if in the Buddyfight only format, where as far as we're aware we can't use Sanctitude, we would replace Sanctitude with the second Blue Dragon Shield. You don't want to go full in on the Sentinel orders, because unless you're exactly Zonya, you won't be able to use multiple in one turn, and you want to keep open the availability to PG multiple times in one turn. But they're useful enough, especially the fact that they get around Sentinel restricts. Certain types of Sentinel restricts, at least, like Drum the Futures. We do want to have some number of them. And Dragon Worlds is the weakest, but it is an effect that can still come up and save us from a pinch in the worst of scenarios. So regarding Gao's place within the format, so in normal format, I don't think this is a deck that you should super be using. It can potentially cheese some wins with like the overtrigger stuff with Drum the Future and like the infinite power and plus crit. So it can be something that's fine as a fun deck, but I wouldn't expect to see a whole lot of success with this deck, just because of the limits it has on its number of attacks. It doesn't really have like outstanding power gain, or like its power gain is pretty solid, but it's nothing like super outstanding, and not enough to make up for the lack of attacks. It doesn't have any hugely impressive card advantage engine to really help on that end either. It's really average on that. However, it hasn't seen much success in the Buddyfight only tournaments in Japan, but I do think this has a real niche in the Buddyfight only format. And the main reason I say that is because one of the strongest decks in the Buddyfight only format is Zonya, because Zonya has access. Let's just pull it up real quick. Zonya has an absolutely crazy card called Snake Gaze. This is a 15k Blitz order that you can then discard a card, just choose the attacking rearguard, and give it the continuous effect that it cannot stand. This is very strong, particularly in the Buddyfight only format, because like while in normal format you might run some decks that this doesn't work against, In Buddyfight, literally every single deck does Rearguard Restanding. There's not a single one that doesn't. All of them do this. So this is always live. And because Zanya is able to get back a Ninja Arts with its Vanguard effect every single turn, it is effectively a recyclable PG in the context of that format. So it becomes very difficult to kill Zanya. And because Gojin Maru has double soul, it's difficult to like slow down its offense by taking out the Gojin Marus. So Zanya is very, very powerful in Buddy Fight only format in that regard. But Gao has the highest power gain of literally any deck in the Buddy Fight only format. I think Tetsuya is the only one that can compare at all, and that's with like a bunch of set orders up. The power gain that Gao puts up is super, super impressive. And the best way to overwhelm Zanya, and a lot of defensive decks of similar ilk, is to put up really high power that goes over the top of their defensive gimmick. So because of that, I think Gao has a real niche in the Buddy Fight only format as the deck that is best positioned to go over the top of the defensive gimmicks of Katana World. However, it must be said at the same time that that Gao has a very real weakness to one of the other aspects of the Zanya deck, which is this Shadow Dive keyword that is on both Byakuya's as well as Gojin Maru. And the two multi-attackers are Gojin Maru and Byakuya. They both have this passive effect that during their battle, your opponent cannot intercept, which obviously puts quite the conundrum in our usage of Thunder Knight's Drum Bunker Dragon. So that is quite annoying for the deck to deal with. However, their Vanguard attack is not going to have that passive effect. So ideally, you just hold the intercept for their Vanguard swing and use it there. You're still going to be able to get some defensive value, but it's just something I want you to be aware of if you end up picking up Gao on that basis for use in the Buddy Fight only tournaments. Now, I want to very quickly go over some of the play lines that the deck has available to it. So starting off, we have the turn 2. So we're assuming we're at 1 damage, at least 1 damage. And we should assume like we have at least like 1 extra card in here. Now, this is a line available to us if we have, as long as we have a Drum Bunker ST in our drop zone. That can be, we got that off of that can be in our gauge from our initial 2 gauge. We can get that off the top 7 with Gao. Actually, does that work as well as we want it to? And we can call it from hand if we absolutely need to. Yeah, gauge and draw happens before you discard to ride. So ideally, we don't need to grab it off this, but that is like an option if we absolutely need to. And we have any of these 3 in our hand. We either have Drum Bunker Dragon, Blue Sky Knight's Drum, or Thunder Knight's Drum. And by having that, we are able to go into whatever of these for a single gauge. Call out this by Soul Blasting 1. And we have like a super free column. If it's Blue Sky Knight's Drum, it's going to have give us an extra draw by counterblasting 1. And if it's Thunder Sky Knight's Drum is instead going to have a cool card in its Mighty Soul and be able to intercept for 15. If it's the Thunder Knight's Drum line, it can also have put this into Soul if you want some more defensive value. And if we called it via Drum Bunker, it's going to have, how much is this again? This is 2 soul, plus its own plus 5k shield. So that's 20k shield. Very nice defensive value there. And then it's very easy to have access to multiple of these, especially because Gao is going to be looking top 7 on ride for any of our drums. Gao himself is going to have a power plus 5k on him from Sunfist, Sunshine Impact, which is super nice because it means that your opponent cannot single card guard your Vanguard circle, even though you don't have any booster behind it. So if they want to not take a potential crit, they will have to commit 2 cards to your Vanguard swing, which people typically don't really want to do. Which is just super, super nice to have access to. You're not going to be breaking over any triggers if your opponent rips any, and you're going second, so if your opponent's already on grade 2 because you went second. But that's fine because we're getting these setups for very, very low commitment. If we also saw the Drago Wisdom Knowledge of Fifth Omni along the way, we're also going to be able to bind that to just get another card. Just super, super, super low commitment turn 2. I think you do want to go a bit higher on Thunder Knight's drum than Blue Sky Knight's drum. The more I think about it, because this is more valuable in multiples than this is, because this is limited by your counterblasts. But these 2 cards make a really, really good early game backbone, which is super, super nice to have. Also want to quickly note that Drum Bunker does not care about your Vanguard being grade 3 or greater. So if you're going second, this line actually becomes a 25k shield. And the Blue Sky Knights with a Drum Bunker and it becomes a 10k shield. So it gives you some nice additional defensive value if you're going second, which is nice because Buddyfight starters do not give you an additional card when you go second. Next, let's talk about our going first turn 3. So let's say we put out Blue Sky Knights. Because it had Soul Guard, our opponent didn't go after it, so it's still here. We're not going to, because our opponent is on grade 2 at this moment, we aren't going to be wanting to go into the Drum of the Future at this stage. So the line we want to be doing is we want to be Soul Blasting out 1 so that we can grab from our deck a cool Drum Bunker Dragon. Who will take a Buddy Soul from the top. And then we get to go with that effect, go into whatever we want. And typically that is going to be the Crimson Battler Drum. So because of Sunfist, everything in this front row is going to have power. At least one of these front rows is ideally going to have a Drum Bunker SD behind it. The really unfortunate thing about this deck is that it would really, really appreciate more boosters because it can be really hard to get a good backline with this deck because of the lack of boosters that are available to you. But like this kind of situation is pretty fine. Because we go 15 with a crit, then this is going to... No, we don't do that. Sorry. Yeah, we go... It's something like this. Link attack for... This is 33. Very nice power. Then we counterblast 1. Restand. This is going to swing in again for 15. This is going to swing in for 23. Actually, a better card for this position, if you can manage it, is Thunder Knight's Drum. Because Thunder Knight's Drum gets an additional power plus 5,000 when Link attacks. And it doesn't care about your opponent being grade 3 or not for that condition. It only cares about it for the on-attack condition. So if we have this instead... Having this one specifically doesn't matter, actually. So with this one instead, this is going to have an additional power plus 5,000 on it. So this Gao is going to then swing for a cool 38 with crit pressure, of course, because it's a Vanguard swing. Then this will be able to swing for a cool this is going to be able to swing for a cool this has front power, sorry. A cool a cool 23 with crit gain. And then this is going to swing for 20 on our opponent's 10k Vanguard. So all of these are good numbers, good pressure. It's only 3 attacks, but we make do with what we have. And then, of course, the line with Drum the Future goes something like this. This has an additional power plus 10k on it. This is relatively small, but it has crit on it. We're gonna have 2 opportunities to rip more triggers, so we can pretty safely go 23 here. Then this will swing with the link attack, which will pump it up to 3846 with crit pressure because it's a Vanguard swing. Then we restand this and restand this as well. This will swing in with 28, gets a drive check, so it has crit pressure. And then ideally we hit a trigger or 2 along the way, so this can swing for at least 25. Not super fantastic numbers, but the crit pressure is pretty nice to have. You can also sub this out for 5th Omni Drum if you want more power in the scenario that you're in, or if you want crit pressure. You have the ability to modify your attacking setup based on what specifically the situation calls for, what you would think your opponent has, stuff like that. And then, of course, this goes completely off the rails with Persona Ride, especially... Oh, right. Right, I forgot about some of the power here. I forgot that this being in here means that this has an additional power plus 5,000. It's not a huge difference maker, but it means that this is 28, so it's demanding a 2 card on its initial swing. And then on the after Vanguard swing, if you hit at least 1 trigger on either of these, it's going to be swinging for 30 solo, which is again demanding 2 cards while being a 2 crit swing. And then if our opponent is already at 5 damage, our opponent's already at 5, and we have this kind of setup. So we have the 5th Omni Drum over here. It's going to have power plus 5k because Drum Bunker's in its Buddy Soul. So this is going to be able to swing with an additional plus 10k for... oh, I forgot about the Persona Ride power. So this is going to swing for 40 base. Then this is going to swing, before even accounting for if we have Sunfist live, this is going to swing for 66. Then these will both restand. This will swing for 38 with a drive check and can't be, unit PGs cannot be used on it. And then this will swing for 48. Very, very big numbers. And that's before any triggers that we end up checking. So very good stuff. Very impressive numbers. Definitely the most impressive among the Buddyfight decks. It's one of the only ones that has access to a third drive check as well, which is super nice. But it is definitely very constrained by its lack of good back row rear guards, and the lack of a fifth attack. Those two things definitely hold this one back a lot. But I do think it has a real niche within the Buddyfight only tournaments. With that said, next time we will be talking about one of the top contenders for the Buddyfight decks. We're going to be talking about Tetsuya Kurodake. So I'll see you guys then. This is Hunter Surge signing off.